battle between the new Moto G and the Xperia E3, things do, on the surface, seem quite simple. The Moto G is, without doubt, one of the best budget phones you can buy. The Sony E3 does have some charms though, the first of which is that the E3 supports 4G, but the Moto G does not in this version. So, if 4G is important to you, you'll need to go with the Sony Xperia E3 for now. In terms of screen size and quality, the Moto G has an extra ½ inch over the E3, and it's a better quality screen too, with the G boasting a 720 by 1280 resolution, giving it 294 ppi, while the E3 has a more modest 480 by 854 pixels, which equates to about 218 ppi. Both are IPS LCD panels though, so expect good viewing angles. In terms of processors, both of these phones have the same specs. They're powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon 400s and a quad-core 1.2 GHz CPU. Both phones have 1GB of RAM, which is sufficient but hardly earth-shattering in terms of performance. Storage differs too, with the E3 offering just 4GB of onboard space and the Moto G providing 8GB. Both can be expanded to 32GB via microSD slots, but remember that apps usually need to be run from the phone's storage, and both 4GB and 8GB will fill up very quickly. Speaking of operating systems, both are running KitKat, although there are very minor differences in the actual version numbers. Motorola promises that all of its phones will get a good update to the latest version of Android. Sony makes no similar promises, so you may never see Lollipop on this handset. Sony also customises Android with its own look and feel, and Motorola ships its phones with vanilla Android. Which you prefer depends on your taste, but Sony does do a good job with its Android builds, and although it's a little bit more cluttered, there's no disaster here, and the UI is pretty clean. The E3 has a larger battery too, so you might see better battery life over the Moto G. With that said though, the lack of 4G on the Moto G will help it last longer, while the E3 may drink more power. Again though, the larger and higher resolution screen of the G may have an impact on battery life too. The camera is better on the Moto G, with an 8MP shooter in place compared to Sony's 5MP camera. Weirdly though, the Moto can only record at 720p while the E3 manages 1080p. For stills though, Motorola listened to complaints about the camera in the original G, and this one is a vast improvement. So in conclusion, the more expensive phone is better overall, unless you need 4G, in which case the cheaper phone is your best bet.